Street?
Clonard Street, Balbriggan.
Okay, is she conscious?
I don't think so. What can I do? I don't think she's breathing.
You don't think she's breathing?
I don't think so. What do I do?
Where is she now? She's on the floor on the floor?
Yeah.
Is she breathing?
I don't know. Hold on.
We've got a puff ready for down the stairs. She might be breathing. Carissa, can you see her chest?
I think so. She's bleeding really badly from her nose or something.
Okay, can you see her chest moving up and down? Hold on.
No.
You can't?
No, I can't.
Okay, up to her now. What age is she?
27.
She's 27?
Yeah.
I need you to keep on breathing into your wife, okay? Is she breathing at all?
No, there's nothing. Will the ambulance be long?
The ambulance is on its way, so we're also the fire engine on the way out, okay?
Can you ring the guards or something? They might know.
We've got the engine from Balbriggan on the way.
Okay.
Mary Gough, aged 27, originally from Gormanstown, County Meath, was found unresponsive by her husband Colin Whelan at the bottom of the stairs of their home on Clonard Street in Balbriggan, Dublin, around 12:30 a.m. on the 1st of March 2001. He phoned the emergency services for assistance. The emergency services operator guided Colin Whelan through the process of administering CPR. Mary was taken to the Beaumont Hospital and confirmed formally dead at 1:25 a.m. Gardai attended the house and within hours of reviewing the scene, talking to hospital staff and the circumstances at the house scene, they quickly began to suspect foul play. The assistant state pathologist Marie Cassidy attended the scene the following morning, and following an autopsy at the morgue on the Malahide Road, Marino, she formally confirmed Gardai's suspicions. Mary Gough had been murdered. This wasn't a tragic accident, a fall down the stairs after a shower. Later it would be established that some form of ligature had been used in the act of strangulation. After attending, emergency staff at the Balbriggan home were struck by how cold Mary's body was. Hospital staff also noticed that Mary had a swollen tongue. The nurses also noted fresh scratches on Colin Whelan's chest because he had a number of buttons open on his top. It was actually the hospital staff who first raised their concerns when Gardai Síochána. Assistant State Pathologist Marie Cassidy had also noted marks on Mary's neck as well as hemorrhaging of the eyelids and inner mouth in her autopsy examination. There had been some minor bruising on her legs and posterior, but they were more consistent with her body being dragged after incapacitation rather than a fall down the stairs. The classic blunt trauma, bone fractures and breaks were also all missing from such a domestic incident. And critically, at the time of death, it was estimated to have been significantly earlier, more likely sometime after 10 p.m. on the night of February the 28th, rather than after midnight on March the 1st. Over the following 4.5 years of investigation, including Colin Whelan's own mysterious disappearance, we'll go into that an awful lot more later with our feature, the work of Irish and Spanish police and Interpol, a web of careful planning and deceit by Mary Gough's husband would be revealed that dated back more than 18 months prior to their wedding in 2000. This is the case of the murder of Mary Gough and a very highly calculated killer.
March 1st, 2001. Mary Gough was declared dead on arrival at Beaumont Hospital, Dublin.
Mary was a very happy young girl, very jolly, and we had great fun together. We used to go for walks and picnics. Mary was very quiet and reserved and laid back, but she was also very sharp and witty.
Well, coming from a family of 5 boys, she had to stand up for herself, and she was well able to stand up for herself, Mary, you know. She'd call a spade, and if you were doing something wrong, she'd let you know about it, like, you know.
Mary and I met on the first day in National School in Stamullen. We met at the school gate, and Mary took me by the hand and brought me into school, and it was just like she took me on like a sister that day, and we stayed friends from that day onwards.
I'm Patrick Murray. I'm a retired detective inspector. I joined on Gardai Síochána on the 14th of August 1985, and I retired in May 2018. So I was 33 years a member from Gardai Síochána. In 2001, I was detective sergeant in Balbriggan, and I was in charge of the plainclothes and detective unit.
Pat was asked to investigate if there was foul play in Mary's death.
This was a big case for me. I was young, I was ambitious. This was the first time where I was put in a position of responsibility. Somehow things didn't add up, they just didn't sit well. We took a statement off the husband who was in the house with her at the time, and he explained in a statement that, yeah, myself and Mary were at home that night. They were sitting watching TV, and Mary had gone up to have a shower, and he said then he heard thump, 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 and he knew she had fallen down the stairs, and he came out and she was lying unconscious at the bottom of the stairs.
I need an ambulance. My wife's had to fall down the stairs. What can I do? I don't think she's breathing.
Pat had a body and just a single witness statement. He needed more and turned to staff at the hospital.
One of the nurses there, and a very astute nurse, went to speak with Colin Whelan to sympathise with him and just talk with him. And he was leaning over, and his shirt was unbuttoned, and she could see down the front of his shirt, and she could see a scratch mark on his chest. And he said, oh, she must have flailed out of me that time at the bottom of the stairs. And she thought this was strange.
It was the first suggestion a crime might have taken place. Pat needed to secure the Whelan home.
Colin Whelan handed up his keys from his house. We preserved the scene just for precaution measures.
Pat then interviewed the first people to arrive on the scene.
The ambulance crew found Mary wrapped in a duvet, and there was a towel around up near her head. They said Mary's body was cold to the touch. When they tried to jump her heart, there was no response from her heart. She was flatlined, which they said was unusual if she had died within the period of time her husband was saying.
There are red flag moments in every investigation. The coldness of the body to the touch, the scrape marks on Colin Whelan's chest. These were red flag moments to me in this investigation.
But did they signal a crime? Pat sent Mary's body to state pathologist Professor Marie Cassidy.
I remember that morning going to Marino to meet Marie Cassidy there. After the post-mortem, Marie Cassidy came out to me and she said, Pat, you have a murder on your hands. The post-mortem showed that her injuries were not consistent with a fall down the stairs. She pointed out the red hemorrhaging under Mary's eyes, and she said they're blood vessels that break during pressure on the neck. She opened Mary's mouth and she explained about her tongue being nearly 3 times the size it should be, and she said there is a mark on the side of her neck, a burn mark. She had no doubt whatsoever about the cause of death. This lady has been strangled.
Dominic Hayes, Chief Superintendent, Kilkenny Carlow Garda Division. In 2001, I was the Detective Inspector attached to the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation. The day after the body of Mary Whelan was discovered, we were sent to Balbriggan to assist in the investigation of the sudden death following the post-mortem examination.
I knew I'd be playing a vital role in that investigation. I was not panic-stricken, but I was apprehensive and got a flutter. Now you have to step up to the plate.
Pat had major questions about how Mary died, so his first step was to order a forensic investigation of the Whelan home.
There was a small burn mark on Mary's neck, and you would expect from someone who was strangled that there would be excessive bruising on her neck. There wasn't. We needed to find out how Mary was killed and where she was killed.
They could see that there was blood staining upstairs. There was blood staining found on the upper landing near the bedroom. There was some blood staining on the door saddle. There was also blood staining on the wall. So certainly some interaction or some assault had taken place.
These are the original exhibits from the case, and it's a bit surreal for me in that these exhibits haven't seen the light of day for 16 years. This is the actual towel that was found at the scene. One of the items seized was the house phone. This is a fraction of the paperwork that was gathered during the course of the investigation. Another exhibit we have here is wallpaper that was taken from the wall of the main bedroom. When one is being strangled, there are blood vessels in one's nose that burst and they emit a mist of blood. And our forensic testing was able to show that this mist of blood was on the wallpaper.
The blood-stained wallpaper showed Mary had been killed near the door, in the couple's bedroom. Further evidence confirmed her body had then been moved.
Mary had burning on the back of her buttocks, which was consistent with being dragged down the stairs. I was sure Colin was lying, but I had to keep an open mind. Could someone have broken in and killed Mary? Maybe Colin had an accomplice.
The house alarm system gave Pat his answer. It logged every time a door or window opened or closed.
We knew that nobody else had been in the house or got into the house. There was only 2 people in the house that night, and we were quite satisfied there was nobody else there. Here we have the post-mortem saying that this lady was strangled, and an alarm system that showed that none of the doors were opened or closed or interfered with in any way. So the finger of suspicion was clearly pointing at Colin Whelan.
Colin and Mary had known each other for nearly 10 years.
Mary told me straight away when she met Colin Whelan. She was working in a local pub over in Gormanstown. That's where they met. She was delighted. She was so excited and couldn't wait for me to meet him.
Mary was living at home at the time in Stamullen, yeah. My mother was chuffed, like, you know, that. But Mary would have been fussy enough to get a boyfriend, like, you know, that would have to tick all the boxes, and we would have welcomed Colin in as part of our family. We would have welcomed him 100%, and it was like another son for my mother, you know.
Colin, take you, Mary, as my wife, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, all the days of our lives.
I, Mary, take you, Colin, as my husband, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, all the days of our lives.
He's a well-heeled gentleman with a good job, and his wife. We spoke to both sides of the family, and they seemed to be very happy together, and there was no domestic disputes with them, and everything seemed to be going fine.
I'd like to thank Marie for her wonderful daughter, Mary, now my wife. I won't ask her to say anything because of my neck. But she said, oh, she'd break it if I did. So I won't ask her.
This is the phone that Colin Whelan had rang 999 on and spoke to the emergency operator, who gave him instructions how to do CPR on his wife.
Well, you just keep on breathing into your wife, okay? Is she breathing?
I can't. Hold on. Oh, there's nothing.
Okay, can you see your chest moving up and down?
Hold on. No.
The recording suggested Colin Whelan was fighting to save his wife's life. So Pat had the phone examined by forensics. If Colin had performed CPR while talking to the operator, there would be traces of her blood or mucus on the phone. But there was nothing.
Fighting to save his wife's life, my arse. He was doing absolutely nothing of the sort.
Hi, I need an ambulance. Royce had to fall down the stairs.
He didn't give her any resuscitation. He'd done nothing. Absolutely nothing, but let her there, leave her there. If there was any semblance of life, he just let her die. That's it. He watched her die. He had no compassion, no empathy for this woman that he married and went through a whole charade of a wedding and a relationship and a honeymoon. And now he is at the stage of having killed her.
What can I do? I don't think she's breathing.
You don't think she's breathing?
I don't think so. What do I do?
He was playing a part at that particular time to deceive not only the ambulance personnel and the 999 caller, but also the police. He even makes reference to the police. Call the police, they'll know what to do.
Can you ring the guards or something? They might know.
The last thing he wanted around the place is the police. He was some bollocks.
I remember sitting in the church on Clonard Street. And there's nobody
What
there.
possessed him to murder the woman he married? I had to figure out what conceivable motive had Colin Whelan got to kill his wife. Colin Whelan thought he was an actor, but in fact he was a murderer, and a devious, cold-blooded murderer at that.
What do I do? Will the ambulance be long?
May Mary and Colin always be true to each other. May they be one in heart and mind. May they be united in love forever, through Christ our Lord.
Mary's murder left her friends and family in shock and forced them to rethink her relationship with her husband, Colin.
Well, Mary couldn't wait for this day to come. But when the actual day did come, she was very nervous and very upset. When she got to the church door and everybody turned around to look at her, she got very emotional and she couldn't stop crying.
Go as far as the door, Mary, and then we'll get you sorted, dress-wise and all of that.
To me, she just didn't seem right on the day. She didn't seem as happy as I thought she would have been for a girl that getting married, the biggest day of her life. Life brought down to missing her dad. As my father had passed in 1989, Mary asked me to give her away to represent my father. Yeah, she seemed very, very nervous and she was shaking a little bit, you know, but she was just putting it down to nerves and gave her a little kiss on the cheek and I handed her over to Colin then.
In sickness and in health, all the days of our lives.
Conor Fegan, I'm the chief reporter with the Herald newspaper.
I remember sitting in the church on Clonard
Colin
Street.
grew up in North County Dublin and to all appearances seemed to have a fairly normal background, a normal middle class upbringing. There didn't appear to be any great difficulties. Colin went through his education, managed to qualify and get a very good job in IT, in the banking sector. But certainly there didn't appear to be anything in his background that might indicate that he was a cold-hearted killer.
Okay, this is some background timeline for this feature. Let's go back from the incident year back to 1992-1993. Colin Whelan is in a relationship with a 23-year-old girl for 6 months. She becomes pregnant. Early on in her pregnancy, there's an altercation between them, and Colin knees her in the stomach. This leads to a miscarriage by his girlfriend. The pair break up the relationship, but the girlfriend does not report the previous incidences of abuse and the use of ligatures on her over periods of time. In 1993, Colin Whelan and Mary Gough meet in the Huntsman Inn for the first time. They begin a romance and a relationship. They call off their relationship for a 6-month period, but soon reunite and continue together. This is around 1995-96, but they eventually get back together. By 1997, January the 31st, Colin Whelan is convicted of careless driving, leading to the death of his neighbour in Gormanstown, one Elizabeth Murphy, aged 61, who was travelling with her husband. Elizabeth was in the passenger seat, her husband was driving. A charge of drunk driving is dropped from that case. In 1998, Colin Whelan and Mary Gough become engaged. March the 15th, 2000, Colin takes out a 10-year life assurance policy on both of them, initially for £200,000. That same May of that year, 2000, literally, 3 months later, Colin increases the policy to £400,000. He doubles it. And by all accounts, this is an expensive premium policy to be paying, considering it will expire in June 2010, and considering this is for people, a young couple, both in their late 20s. At the time, and at the time of the incident in 2001, Colin's working as an IT engineer for Irish Permanent in St. Stephen's Green, Dublin, while Mary is working as a clerical admin assistant in a solicitor's office. In September 2000, the couple marry. The 9th of September is their wedding date. They live at a house Colin had bought from his grandparents on Clonard Street, Balbriggan. Colin owned that house. He bought it. Now, shortly after their wedding, this is around late 2000 and working into 2001, Colin has already been participating in a secret online relationship with a girl in Wales. That girl's name is Helen Shepherd. 2001, and we're now on to February the 28th through to the early hours of March the 1st. This is essentially the incident day. This is when Mary Gough was murdered. Earlier, on the morning of February the 28th, around 7 a.m, our understanding is both Mary and Colin, wedded couple recently, only 6 months in, arise and prepare to leave for their respective workplaces. For Colin, he has to take, I think, a slightly longer trip, and it lasts between around 7:20 and 8:40 a.m. before he gets out of Balbriggan into Dublin City, and he travels by train. We know he gets the 8:15 train, and he eventually gets to work. We also know that at some point during this afternoon, and briefly after he phones Mary, he then phones Helen Shepherd in Wales. But this time he has a 30-minute conversation with her. Now, I want to emphasise, Helen Shepherd had no idea really the person she was talking to in Colin Whelan. So bear that in mind. She's as much a victim in this case as many people. At 6 p.m. on the evening of February the 28th, Colin arrives back in Balbriggan off his train trip from the city centre and Stephen's Green where he worked. Between 6:25 and 7:25 p.m. he attends the local gym. He's a fit guy, handsome looking guy. That evening, between 8 and 9:41 p.m, the couple in their car drive to Drogheda to a collection detox to collect a detox report from a homeopathy clinic, and they then return home. This was to do with some treatment Barry was having. Around 10 p.m, and this is according to Colin Whelan's statement to Gardai, they're sitting in the living room in front of the TV. Around 11:15 p.m, or at least sometime around then, Colin would state that Mary went upstairs for a shower. We know that sometime after midnight, so we're into the early hours of March the 1st, Colin still remaining downstairs all this time, again according to his statement, but at some point after midnight he hears repeated heavy thumps. He describes them as 3 thump 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 on the stairs and rushes out into the hallway, only to find his wife at the bottom of the stairs, not moving. There's a call logged with the emergency services in Ireland at around about 12:30 a.m. Now this call is logged and recorded of Colin talking to the emergency services. An ambulance, Gardai and Shia Colin themselves, and a fire brigade are dispatched to the home. Sadly, at 1:25 a.m, Marie Whelan, ní Gough, is formally pronounced dead at Beaumont Hospital. Now we're going to move into the events after the incident evening night. We're at March the 9th, 2001. Detectives, having examined Colin Whelan's work PC, his home PC, his phones, other devices, learn of a connection and communication he had with Helen Shepherd in Wales. And on March 9, 2001, detectives travelled to Wales and they interview Helen Shepherd as to how she can help them with the case. Following information she gives them, and following further investigation in the case, on April the 10th, 2001, Colin Whelan is formally arrested for the murder of his wife, Mary Gough. Since the incident night, he has moved back to his parents' house in Gormanstown.
Evans was new at that particular time, so it was new to actually go in and search his workplace. We had secured a warrant to search the offices where he worked.
When I arrived there, they gave us access to his workstation and I took possession of his computer. We discovered Colin had wiped his hard drives and deleted its online history. At that stage, I believed we'd hit a brick wall, really.
An expensive part of Pat's investigation had proved fruitless.
I felt, holy fuck, where do we go from here? I started to question myself, you know. He'd got one up on us, as such. You just have to pick yourself up like anything else in life and go forward. Look for the breaks, where to go next.
Pat remained convinced digital data held clues to the case. So he extended the search to include Irish Permanent's giant hard drives.
What Irish Permanent had was what they call a double proxy server. It saved all the material onto a second server, so everything that anyone did was saved, and we had access to that. There was 14,000 logs a day that we had to search through.
While Gardai data analysts trawled the database, one critical piece of physical evidence was still missing.
Any defence barrister at any trial will want to make sure that the prosecution can show how someone was murdered and have a murder weapon. And this is something that we had to establish if we were to bring our case forward. And it was imperative that we find out how Mary was strangled and what was used to strangle Mary. We found a towel at the scene, which we initially looked on as a possible murder weapon, but it wasn't frayed or twisted or stretched in any fashion, so we believed it had nothing at that point to do with the strangulation.
Then suddenly, Pat's hunch about Colin Whelan's computer paid off, when investigators examining his data history made a chilling breakthrough.
When we looked at the computers, our experts from the Computer Crime Investigation Unit were able to tell me that the search engine was used by Colin to search for strangulation,
Loss of consciousness.
manual strangulation.
How long does it take to die from a head injury? So he was well versed.
And certainly the loss of consciousness was a term that was researched the very day that Mary was killed. He was researching, I suppose, how best to kill his wife. And obviously disguised the fact that it wasn't an accident. So that was certainly a telling piece of evidence.
But when Garda analysts continued their search through the mountains of data, they uncovered something else.
For the first time, I was gobsmacked at what we were finding. Colin had looked up a guy by the name of Henry Lewis Wallace.
Henry Lewis Wallace is a serial killer in the United States, and he strangled a number of women in the early 1990s. What Gardai discovered was that Colin had been searching Henry Lewis Wallace's information and stories about him, newspaper reports from the States. Lewis Wallace developed a way of strangling a woman through a towel. So it was basically wrapping a towel around the victim's neck and then strangling the person with a cord through the towel so that the cord itself would not leave direct marks on the victim's body.
Suddenly, the towel took on a new significance. Firstly, we believed it was just there to wipe the blood from Mary, but it was actually used by Colin to disguise the ligature marks on Mary's neck, exactly what Henry Lewis Wallace had done in his case in America. It spelt out to me the deviousness of Colin Whelan and the depth of thought he put into and planning in killing his own wife.
Pat now ordered another search of the house. He was looking for anything that could have been used, along with the towel, to strangle Mary without leaving a mark.
The first item we have here is a dressing gown and the dressing gown cord. Colin's dressing gown was examined and we could establish that the belt was taut in the middle and had been stretched.
There was a lot of blood staining, Mary's blood, in the very middle of that rope, which was also stretched and extended. So we believe he had used that to strangle Mary.
The devious part of this is that after it was used, it was placed back on the dressing gown, and that's where we found it. This is the towel that Colin used with the rope of his dressing gown to strangle Mary in an effort not to leave a trace of a ligature. There was a small mark on Mary's neck, and obviously we believe that when he was strangling her, she got to turn round to scrape him, and in doing that, the towel moved and the cord moved and burnt her on the neck.
Pat had established that Mary Gough was dead before her husband dialed 999, that she was attacked in the bedroom, and that Colin Whelan had used a method of strangulation copied from a serial killer. Pat now had to let Mary's family know that he believed she had been murdered.
It's not an easy job to approach a family and inform them that we're now conducting a murder investigation. You have to be professional in how you deliver the news. In this particular case, we could see from an early stage that the Whelan and Gough family were very united. Nobody contemplated or would even, think that Colin Whelan could hurt Mary. That's the dilemma we were left with, to break the news to both families, but in particular to the Gough family. So the victim's family need to know first.
He walked in the door and he said, "You better sit down." And he said, "This was no accident. Mary was murdered." I couldn't believe it. I was shocked, absolutely shocked, and felt weak and sick. I just felt numb. I just kept saying, this can't be happening, this can't be right.
Unbelievable news to hear. It's bad enough having to deal with Mary's death, but having to deal with that she's been murdered, Just total disbelief that the man you welcomed into our family, welcomed as one of our own brothers. We'd known him for years, and that he could do this, capable of doing this.
We contacted Marie Gough, and I promised her, I said, we will leave no stone unturned. And I remember her stopping, putting her hand up, and she said, no, you'll leave no crumb unturned. You never lose sight of the deceased, and in particular the family who are left behind. All they want to know is who did this, why did they do it, and will justice be served?
Pat now turned to cracking Colin Whelan's motive for murder.
No empathy or feelings for his wife, none whatsoever. It sort of fascinates me by time thinking back, why did he do this? When a technical examination is finished with a scene, we always send in a number of people to search the house for any items that may be of evidential value. One of the items that the search team came across was an insurance policy. And we could see that the insurance policy was taken out in June 2000 to the value of £200,000 on himself and his wife for a 10-year period. When that was approved, he wrote a letter to Irish Life and said he wanted to up that to £400,000. It was bizarre, really, the insurance policy. Here was a young man, 29 years of age, recently married, and his wife, both in the best of their health. And the policy only was going to pay out on the death of one of them within a 10-year period. And we all know how that ended up.
Just the cold and the callousness of what he did, is really unexplainable. One would have to suspect or even believe that, did this man marry Mary for the purpose of killing her to claim the insurance?
But as detectives dug further into Colin Whelan's internet history, they discovered there was more to his motive for murder than just money.
One of the aspects we could determine from Colin Whelan's computer was that he was involved in chat rooms. Here's a man who's married for 6 months, and he's on chat rooms under the name Celtic Tackle, alleging he's single and he's looking. What does it say? I really don't know what he was thinking.
Investigations showed Colin Whelan's infidelity went beyond online flings.
He became very friendly with one particular girl in Wales. As we dug into that a little deeper, we could see he was in contact with her for quite a number of months, and in fact, right up until the day he murdered his wife. I remember travelling to Wales We met some Welsh police there and we knocked on this lady's door. She answered the door and they said, look, at the Irish police are here, they want to speak with you. I walked into the kitchen and on the fridge door with a big magnet was a picture of Colin Whelan. And I said, you know this guy here? That's Colin Whelan, she said. I haven't heard from him in days. I thought he might have been sick or something. And I said, well, Colin's wife is dead. Oh yeah, he told me she was involved in a car crash and she died. And I said, no, she only died a couple of days ago and she's murdered. And with that, she collapsed on the ground. She just went down as if her world came to an end, as if it was like a mountain crumbling. She said she would help us in any way she could, and she gave us full access to her computer, and she told us that every greeting card that Colin Whelan had sent her, she printed it out and kept a copy of it, and she had them in chronological order, and she brought them down to us, and they were there. We just went through them one by one, and you can see as we went through them, their relationship was building and was growing. She told me then that she was in love with Colin Whelan, that she loved him. Colin had played the actor part again and led her right up the path. She genuinely believed she was in love and things were going to be all rosy in the garden, like, you know, so far from the truth it was.
Pat was confident he'd conducted a thorough investigation and was now ready to bring Colin Whelan to justice.
He never said a word, said nothing. I sat in the back with him to Balbriggan Gardai station. He sat there looking into space. You could feel him thinking. You know, his brain was going round and round, but he never said anything.
Colin was detained at Balbriggan Gardai station, and having consulted solicitors and medical people, then he's interviewed. Normally, interview takes about 3 hours. You know, evidence is the currency that you use. Evidence is the currency that the courts will hear to determine whether a person is guilty or not. He listened intensely in respect of each question, and he was very careful in relation to his answers. He was certainly under pressure because he had been aware of the forensic evidence. Mary's blood being on the belt of the night robe, Mary's blood being on the sleeve of his shirt, Mary's blood being on the door of their bedroom.
A very distinct scratch mark down his chest.
Post-mortem had revealed that Mary was strangled. The fact that the body was so cold, we believe he disguised the time of death.
When he was asked about his dressing gown, no comment. When he was asked about, can you explain the blood in the bedroom, no comment.
No comment.
No comment.
There was always an air of arrogance about him, that even once the evidence was damning, he still maintained it was an accident. She fell down the stairs. We looked at his computers. We could show that nobody else had the log-on passwords for the two computers he had access to. So it was difficult for him to deny that.
Colin had visited sites about strangulation, loss of consciousness.
The evidence, particularly around strangulation, asphyxia, the loss of consciousness, a serial killer called Wallace, then there was no comment from there. We had printed off all the different emails he had, particularly in relation to his online relationship with the lady from Wales. A life insurance policy for both of them for 400,000.
That was the motive.
He made no comment.
No comment.
By the time it came to the computer evidence, it was really kind of the icing on the cake for us. And I think it was a fait accompli in his own mind that certainly we had sufficient evidence to charge him. The evidence that was there was damning, and it showed the extent he went to in his own mind, meticulously planned to kill Mary. The fateful day that Colin killed his wife Mary, on the 28th of February 2001. He went to work that morning. At lunchtime he travelled to Brown Thomas and bought her a present in an effort to disguise the fact that, listen, this is a really loving relationship and I bought my wife a present. After lunch he came back and he rang a lady from Wales that he'd been an online relationship with and who had planned to come and visit him in Balbriggan. He then looks up loss of consciousness on his computer and then rings Mary before he goes home on the train. Then he eats his dinner prepared by Mary, and all this in the background that I think at that stage he decided to kill Mary that night.
29-year-old Colin Whelan was brought before Swords District Court today, charged with murdering his wife of 6 months at their home between the 28th of February and the 1st of March last. In court this morning, Sergeant Pat Murray said he arrested Colin Whelan at 8:23 last night and charged him 15 minutes later at Balbriggan Gardai station with the murder of his wife.
The trial date was set for 2.5 years later. Whelan immediately applied for bail and was released the same day.
If the Gardai have objections to bail, they will make them before the High Court. But in this particular case, we had no major misgivings on Colin Whelan, and we didn't believe he was a flight risk.
Now, when he did get bail, there was a number of conditions, the first of which is to surrender his passport so he couldn't travel. And there was also, he had to sign on at a Gardai station on a daily basis.
For over a year, Colin signed in every day at Balbriggan Gardai station until May 2002.
Now, his family came to the station and said that Colin was missing and they didn't know where he was. I looked at the signing on book and I've seen that Colin didn't sign for 2 days, that particular day and the day before. So he had breached his bail conditions, number one, and they're saying he's missing.
Immediately, Pat issued an alert to trace Colin Whelan's car.
The same day, the car was found on the Hill of Howth, parked in a parking spot near the cliff. The keys of the car were on the passenger seat. There was an empty bottle of gin.
All the indications were that Colin may have taken his life. The big question, I think, for the rest of Ireland was, did Colin jump over the edge or did Colin jump bail?
And knowing Colin Whelan, I just said to myself, the bollocks. That was it. Colin Whelan had no more thrown himself over the cliff than the man in the moon. The car was parked to precision, as if someone had got out and measured where to put the tyres. And the window was down a certain amount, which you could put your hand in and retrieve the keys, which would be typical of Colin. You wouldn't have to damage the car to get the keys. An empty bottle of gin was left there to give us the impression that he slugged it down before he threw himself in.
While An Garda Síochána has to take each and every missing person case seriously, deep down in our psyche, I think we believe that maybe this wasn't just a missing person. While there was never a body found at that particular time, we always believed that maybe he'd absconded.
And so this guy now has done a runner. In my mind, I just knew he was gone, but we were going to get him. And where do you start trying to find him? We had made appeals in newspapers. We had kept in contact with his family to see if they had any contact with him or that, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing. So he had a clean getaway, really, in all fairness. I just remember standing there and looking out at the sea because I knew he was somewhere else, but where?
Colin's disappearance left Mary's family struggling to come to terms with her death and fearing that she may never get justice.
We were all very angry at the time. I know I was very angry. Still am to this day. The only sister that you had in the world, and our life had been snuffed out, This is something that you see, you read in the newspapers, you see in the television. It doesn't happen to a family out from Stamullen. Emotionally, we were all over the place. It's just, how do you deal with this? What's going to happen next? What do you do?
9-10 years he was in our lives, and he was a big part of our lives. So I never suspected anything. I just felt sick all the time, and it made me think of people in a different way. I didn't trust people the same, because how could you after I trusted him 100% at the time? And I couldn't get it into my head that this had happened, especially by a person I thought I knew so well. He was like one of us at the time, and I couldn't believe somebody could do this horrendous thing.
I knew this was all part of the plan again. This is all a setup. Very frustrating.
For over a year, Pat could find no trace of Colin Whelan.
You're waiting for the next phone call, you're waiting for any clues, any trails, but there was nothing. Maybe you might never get justice for Mary now, you know?
On April the 10th, 2001, Colin Whelan is formally arrested for the murder of his wife, Mary Gough. Since the incident night, he has moved back to his parents' house in Gormanstown. The following morning, on April the 11th, 2001, he appears in Swords District Court and is charged with murder. He is granted bail. In subsequent appearances in court, a trial date is set for October 2003. Now, this is where we get another bizarre swing in the case of Mary, the murder of Mary Gough and Colin Whelan. Colin Whelan's family report him missing. He's not signed in at Balbriggan Gardai station for 2 days as per his pre-trial bail conditions, and his Peugeot 206 car is located parked on the Upper Cliff Road in Howth. However, an unknown to Gardai, Colin Whelan has falsely applied for a passport in the previous weeks and months in the name of a neighbour, Martin Cian Sweeney, knowing that he had similar looks and build to him, but crucially believed they did not have a passport. Whelan extracted details of this person online to fill out the passport application. He then obtained a birth certificate and absconded to Belfast, then London, then Barcelona, and ultimately the Spanish resort islands once the passport was in his hand and he could travel freely on this fake passport. It was all a well-planned and elaborate suicide ruse to fool police, complete with a gin bottle on the car seat at the Howth cliff top and a roll-down window and a set of keys on the seat as well. Just like the murder of Mary Gough, the life assurance policy that he took out, the playful luring of Helen Shepherd online in Wales, everything in Whelan's life was a Walter Mitty-style abusive escapade and manipulation of people around him for control and pleasure, all for the high life of financial freedom. In 2004, Gardai began to pick up a trail on Whelan in Mallorca, Spain. A friend of the case superintendent on holiday, socialising in a bar, another Irish female tourist who gets talking to a man resembling Colin Whelan, and she even obtains his address in Mallorca, Spain, because they get into a conversation. They're talking about sport and the subject of the Irish team, and rugby comes up, and she decides that when she gets home she wants to send him a gift of an Irish rugby shirt. Whelan happily gives that information. Whelan has been living locally in Mallorca and living with an English girlfriend, working in the Squadron and Karma bars in Port Els Nuas. He's clever and sometimes guarded about his Irish past. His boss, Dave Mitchell, and some friends know him as Martin. However, other people on the island know him by Cian. Whelan will adopt various assumptions of his identity, whether his online Celtic tackle with countless women like Helen Shepherd from Wales, Martin Cian Sweeney, an innocent neighbour who he adopted the identity of, Elizabeth Murphy, killed because when he got drunk behind the wheel of his car, Mary Gough, his wife, who led through a marital charade just for money. They're all victims that Colin Whelan had used, harmed, abused and exploited. Colin Whelan was arrested at the Karma Bar in Mallorca by the Gardai Civil following an arrest warrant and extradited back to Ireland.
British couple that went on holidays to Mallorca, and they went into the bar one evening and they got chatting to this Cian Sweeney. He said he missed home and he'd like to get an Irish rugby jersey, and the lady says, well sure, look, I'll send you over one, give me your email address and stuff, which he did, and wrote it on the back of a business card, being that of the pub. She came back to Ireland and she was flicking through the newspapers one evening, and there was an article on Colin Whelan, and she looked at the photograph and she got a shock. This was the guy she was talking to, who had given his name as Cian Sweeney. She gave me the card with the name Cian Sweeney written on it and an email address, and I brought it back to the station and I looked up obviously the statement that Colin Whelan had signed on the night of this incident. The handwriting looked extremely similar. In actual fact, you could see it was the same type of handwriting.
When Colin was found in Mallorca, he was seen to be living this double life, a new life, which was as if nothing had ever happened back in Ireland. He was going by the name of Cian Sweeney over there, which was the name on the passport he had travelled on. He was in a relationship over there. He was working behind a bar. It just seemed like he had left Ireland, fled, and taken up and just started a whole new life from scratch.
Pat arranged for Colin Whelan to be extradited and flew to Spain to bring him home.
There's a holding area under the Madrid airport. It was just like out of The Silence of the Lambs. There was cells either side. 3/4 way down on the right hand side there was a cell, and Colin Whelan was in that cell, and he saw me and he looked out at me and I looked at him. In the blink of an eye I said, "I have you now," and he's saying, "The game is up." So that was it. It was all felt between us without saying anything. The plane landed in Dublin. I put Colin Whelan in handcuffs. I arrested him on foot of the domestic warrant, and after that I walked him off the plane. We got him. I got him.
Pat wanted to know how Colin Whelan had evaded him for so long.
He had a degree of anonymity on the basis that he had a false passport in a different name. And he said it's simple. He says, "I picked Hope," he says, "because there's no CCTV in Hope train station." And I took the train to Belfast. And then I got a flight to London. And he said, I made my way across to Barcelona. I got a boat in from Barcelona, he says, to Mallorca. And he looked for a job and got a job as a barman. He said, "You know, you're lucky to get me." And I said, "Sure, why do you say that?" He says, "Another week I was gone. I was going to Singapore." He said, "I was gone. You wouldn't get me. I was gone."
On the 11th of April 2005, 4 years after Mary's murder, Colin Whelan was finally brought for trial at the Central Criminal Court.
We were all gathered for the trial. All his family were there, the Gough family were there. Before a trial starts, the accused is arraigned. You are charged with the murder of Mary Gough, and how do you plead? He looked around at me, he looked at the judge, and he said, "Guilty."
Researching how to kill his wife.
I could see all his family, and I must say, I never saw it before. They were absolutely shocked, like talking about people that their jaws dropping. It's an image I'll never forget.
When you hear it, it just knocks you back so much. I couldn't really stand up or anything. I was just shaking from head to toe.
Justice had been done. And he was finally caught and finally admitted his guilt. Would I have thought he was sorry? Most certainly not. He was only sorry that he got caught. My mum has never been the same again since Mary died, you know. There's a part of her gone, you know, that's not coming back. Something she's having to learn to live with.
He could have asked to speak to me, for him to apologise to my face. I mean, he'll get out in so many years for good behaviour or whatever, and as I said before, his family can visit him, bring him little gifts, talk to him, put their arms around him and give him a hug. But I haven't that. I go stand in the graveyard and that's it.
In early 2024, Colin Whelan, held in Wheatfield Prison, Dublin, was denied a parole request and movement to an open prison.